The world returned not with a bang, but with a slow, syrupy seep of awareness. First, the cold. A deep, metallic chill that seeped into his bones. Then, the smell. Not antiseptic, but stale, recycled air and the faint coppery tang of ozone. Leo Vance, whose name was once synonymous with cutting-edge robotics, lay suspended in a cryostasis pod, the glass lid now retracted. His last memory was a searing white light, the catastrophic failure of the experimental star drive on his private yacht, the Icarus. A year, they told him later, a full year lost to the frozen dark, his body preserved while a fleet of automated med drones worked to rebuild him from the cellular level after the radiation exposure. He was the sole survivor. His fortune, his empire, his legacy, all of it was meaningless noise against the profound silence of space and the year he'd spent as a ghost in a machine. His rehabilitation was a lonely, mechanical process. His physical therapist was a hulking, silent automaton with gentle, precise pincers. His only human contact was Ilara, the station's biosystems technician. She was the one who calibrated his pod, who monitored his vitals, who spoke to him in a soft, steady voice as he learned to walk again in the station's low gravity. She was his tether to humanity, a calm presence in the sterile, humming silence of the deep space medical facility. Ilara was quiet, efficient, her face often partially obscured by a diagnostic visor, but her hands were kind as she helped him adjust his exosuit, and her eyes, when he saw them, were the color of warm earth. As the weeks turned into months, Leo noticed a change in her. The standard-issue station jumpsuit began to fit her differently. There was a new fullness to her face, a soft, rounded curve to her abdomen that the utilitarian fabric couldn't completely conceal. He'd been so focused on his own monumental task of rebirth, on learning the mechanics of his own body again, that he had missed the signs of another kind of creation happening right beside him. One day, as she was running a diagnostic on his neural implants, she leaned over his console, and the loose collar of her jumpsuit fell away slightly. He saw the distinct, delicate line of a maternity support garment beneath. The realization hit him with the force of a solar flare. A year. He had been in stasis, his body in a state of suspended animation, for a year. Ilara had been assigned to his long-term care from the beginning. His mind, once capable of designing complex AI, now raced through a terrifying calculation. The timeline was an inescapable equation. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw the way she now moved with a conscious, protective grace. He saw the other technicians give her wider berth in the corridors, their nods holding a new kind of respect. Weeks later, during a session in the zero-gravity physio chamber, a safety alarm blared. A minor pressure fluctuation, nothing serious, but it sent a jolt through the station. Leo, his reflexes still slow, fumbled his handhold. Ilara, moving with an instinct that transcended her training, shot across the chamber, her body turning to shield her midsection as she grabbed his arm, stabilizing them both. In that moment, clinging to each other in the silent, weightless space, the unspoken question became a physical force between them. His gaze dropped to the gentle, undeniable swell of her stomach, then back to her eyes. They were wide, filled with the adrenaline of the moment and something else, a profound, terrifying secret. "Ilara," he whispered, his voice scratchy from disuse, the name a prayer in the sterile air. The child. He couldn't finish. He didn't need to. A single tear escaped her eye, not falling but floating away in a perfect shimmering sphere in the zero gravity. It was a confession more eloquent than any words. She didn't speak. She simply gave a slow, slight nod, her hand coming to rest on her stomach, a universal, silent affirmation. In the deep, cold silence of space, surrounded by the hum of machines that had saved his life, Leo Vance understood. His old self, The genius, the billionaire, had died on the Icarus. He had been reborn not just as a man, but as a father. His greatest legacy wouldn't be a corporation or an invention. It was the new life growing in the warmth of Ilara's womb, a tiny star of hope ignited in the endless, frozen dark. The silence that followed was not the empty silence of the void. It was a thick, resonant quiet, filled with the hum of the life support systems and the thunder of Leo's own heartbeat. The floating tear, a perfect sphere of confessed truth, drifted between them until it collided soundlessly with a bulkhead, leaving a dark, star-like speck on the cool metal. Ilara broke the gaze first, her movements deliberate as she guided them both to a secure handhold. "We should return to the main deck," she said, her voice carefully modulated back to its professional calm. But the tremor beneath the surface was unmistakable. The moment of raw vulnerability was over, sealed away behind the necessary protocols of their environment. The following days were a new kind of stasis. Leo went through his physiotherapy sessions with the automaton, his mind light years away. He watched Ilara with a new, agonizing intensity. Every time she winced slightly, adjusting her stance, a jolt of primal concern shot through him. When she brought him his nutrient supplements, his eyes would drop to her hand, imagining he could see the faint, rapid pulse of a second heartbeat at her wrist. The sterile, metallic world of the station had been transformed. It was no longer just a hospital, it was a cradle. And he, Leo Vance, the architect of his own isolation, was tethered to it by a bond he still couldn't fully comprehend. He tried to find the right moment, the right words. How do you ask, "How did this happen?" when the answer felt both impossibly clinical and profoundly intimate? He had been a body in a tube, a collection of frozen cells and flickering synapses. She had been his keeper, his guardian. The power dynamics of it all made his stomach clench. Finally, during a quiet shift cycle when the station's ambient lighting was dimmed to simulate night, he found her in the observation deck. She was staring out at the infinite tapestry of stars, her hands resting on the transparent aluminum, her profile silhouetted against the galactic core. Her jumpsuit was unzipped at the top, revealing the gentle, firm curve of her stomach more prominently. "Ilara," he said, his voice soft so as not to startle her. She didn't turn. "I was assigned to your somatic maintenance," she began, her voice distant, as if reading from a technical manual. "Cryostasis isn't true suspended animation. It's a drastic slowing. The body still requires monitoring, nutrient balancing, neuromuscular stimulation to prevent total atrophy." She took a slow breath. There was a complication, a rare one. A microfracture in the pod's biofield regulator during a solar flare. It caused a temporary, localized reversal of the stasis field. Leo moved closer, standing beside her. He could see their faint reflections in the glass, a pale, gaunt man and the woman carrying his child. "The protocol required a direct cellular-level intervention to restabilize you," she continued, her eyes fixed on the stars. "It's a procedure so hands-on, so biologically intimate, that it's almost never done. The drones couldn't handle the nuance. It was me, or we risked losing you to systemic crystallization." She finally turned to look at him, her earth-colored eyes filled with a complex storm of emotion. "It was during that procedure. A biological transfer. A single viable cell, activated by the field fluctuation, found its way to me. The odds were incalculable. It wasn't supposed to be possible." She looked down at her stomach, and a true, unguarded smile, wondrous and terrified, touched her lips. "But she is. She." The word landed in Leo's soul with more force than any explosion. It wasn't an it. It wasn't a pregnancy. It was a she, a daughter. "Does the company know?" he asked, his mind, ever the strategist, grasping for practicalities. Ilara shook her head. "It would be a liability nightmare. They'd reassign me, subject us both to endless tests. I wanted to tell you first. I needed to see who you were when you woke up. Not Leo Vance, the billionaire, but the man." The man. He hadn't been that in a long time. He had been a brand, a genius, a recluse. Now he was something else entirely. He reached out, his hand hovering inches from her arm. It was the first time he had initiated contact. What happens now? Ilara placed her hand over his, guiding it gently until his palm rested against the firm, warm curve of her stomach. A jolt, subtle and powerful, passed through him. It wasn't a kick, just the profound, vibrant heat of life. "Now," she said softly, turning back to the star-dusted void, "we build a new world, not out there, but in here." Beneath his hand, Leo felt the future quicken. The cold of deep space was finally completely banished. He was no longer just a patient or a survivor. He was the foundation. And his daughter, a miracle born of starlight and accident, was the architect of everything to come.